Good morning, everybody. Hope you're well. Here's another edition of Tip Off this morning. Uh, Biggest sporting event last night was probably the Republican debate. The only thing I learned in the Republican debate is that Mitt Romney doesn't even know how to insult people. He's just gotten knocked off his game. That whole sequence. Not that this is like what I'm looking for out of someone is that they can insult someone. I'm not saying that. I just think it's actually you'll see it. You'll see it. There's a clip out there. He has he has Newt on the ropes for complete open lies about how much money he got from Freddie Mac, what his role was. He's got him. And he just talks in the CEO circle. And he keeps talking in a CEO circle. And he keeps talking in a CEO circle. And he keeps talking in a CEO circle. If he ever would have just stopped and just said it harshly, strictly, straight at him, maybe we would have found out. Instead, Newt came back. Anyway, I'm not talking about policy. I'm just talking about debate. So, anyway, that was the biggest sporting event of the night last night. I hope everyone is well today. Jazz Wednesday against Toronto, and then Saturday against Jimmer. Jimmer played last night. They're terrible, really terrible. Hopefully we not even on a back end back to back. He actually had a moment. He's beginning to have some moments where he looks good, which is progress. He really wasn't having any. He's still having some moments where he looks totally outclassed, which is not great. But that was my take for the 2.5, 3 quarters that I did that while probably doing some other stuff because you really can't just immerse yourself into a Sacramento Kings game. It's too brutal. And then the Memphis Warriors game was disappointing last night because it's really hard to believe the Warriors are going to be anything other than the worst 7 teams in the NBA after watching that game last night. I mean, they just had a colossal collapse. Uh, 9 turnovers in the fourth quarter. No idea how to stop it. Monte Ellis handling the ball too much. Uh, it's interesting. They have a badly constructed roster. As you guys know, I'm not a big proponent of, oh, you got to make a trade, you got to make a trade. They have a badly constructed roster that, with Monte and Steph, that doesn't work. And they just have been so unwilling to pull that trigger or never quite gotten the deal they wanted or something, but it just continues to exist. It doesn't work. And they've overpaid David Lee, which is tough. This is a very interesting day in the NBA because Wednesday is the deadline for extensions for an entire rookie class. And this falls under the new collective bargaining agreement. And what is new about this is the first time that teams can designate a player and give him that 5-year extension. But there's two twists on this that make this a little bit more complicated than simply, and I hope I don't bore you with this on tip-off today. There's two things about this that make this a little bit more complicated. And we're talking about the 2008 draft class. So Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook is signed. Now a question today, the real questions are Kevin Love, Danilo Gallinari, Eric Gordon, 8th pick Joe Alexander's out of the league already. DJ Augustine's not going to get the extension. New Jersey's Brooke Lopez, they got to figure out what they're going to do. That one's a little complicated. Other than that, it's a bunch of Roy Hibbert in Indiana. They got to figure out what they're going to do. Nicholas Batum in Portland, Serge Ibaka, Oklahoma City. So they're all eligible for extensions by Wednesday. Kevin Love and Eric Gordon may be the most interesting cases. Maybe Gallinari as well. Because and this is going to come up on the Jazz as well. That's why I'm bringing it up now. There's this new rule that you can give someone a 5-year extension if he's your designated player. But it has to be a max contract. So the only way you give a player the 5th year is you max him out. Now, every player out there and every agent out there is going to tell you that his client has to get that 5-year deal. I mean, come on, I'm your guy. If you really like us, you got to give that to us. I mean, if we're part of your future, we need to have that. And they're not going to accept anything less because that's going to be the whole negotiation. That if you're not giving us that 5 years, then maybe we don't need to. Well, maybe we don't need to sign our next 4-year extension with you. I mean, if you don't really appreciate us, then maybe we need to go to free agency and see what the market has for us. And it creates this incredible, contentious relationship. This was designed so it, badly with the idea that would help teams retain their players because they get this first shot, but it really helps you retain one player. If you give the wrong player the 5-year max, that gets pretty interesting. Um, so I think this is worth watching. Minnesota is balking right now on giving the 5-year to Love. They'd like to give him 4. Maybe because they know Ricky Rubio's coming and they want him to be the designate when it's his turn. Rubio's interesting. I don't know how Rubio will work because he's part of the 2009 draft class, but I don't think his contract starts till this year. So he's still a few years, 3-4 years out. But if Kevin Love, depending his circumstance, so I think that you have to keep an eye on this little rule. Nicholas Batum is not going to get the 5-year, and so then how does he react, et cetera, et cetera. So keep an eye on that. Blake Griffin, I think is next year. You'll see it with James Harden next year, which is just going to be another big moment for Oklahoma City, who was the 3rd pick. Rubio, as I said, I don't think Steph Curry comes up. What do they do about his ankle? Do they want to commit to him for 5 years or not? Very interesting little rule that, again, was designed for the sole purpose of giving teams a chance to keep their own guy. But the reality is it's giving players even more leverage than they may have had before, and it's creating a contentious relationship with teams and the player. So keep an eye on that and how that plays out, because that will be, I think, very interesting to see. I'm getting a lot of questions. Where do I have the Jazz finishing in the playoff picture? And I don't mean to be a cop-out. I still don't know. I mean, I still think it's going to be very difficult to make the playoffs. Memphis, in a miraculous fashion, wins again. Dallas is back on their game with another win last night. And if you just take a look at the Western standings and you say, okay, well, what teams are in the playoffs? Well, I'm certain Oklahoma City's making it. I'm certain Denver's making it. Pretty certain the Clippers are making the playoffs. Memphis has won 7 in a row. They're making the playoffs. I believe the Spurs are making the playoffs. And Dallas is making the playoffs. Okay, well, now I've got 6 teams that are in. The Lakers are not one of those. I'm pretty certain they're still making the playoffs. I know they've lost 3 in a row and they got all sorts of problems. I can't see the Lakers not making the playoffs. So that's 7. Now Portland, Houston, or Utah is number 8. And Portland's played 9 road games already. Houston's actually won 7 straight. They've played 9 road games. I put Portland at 8 in all likelihood. So I still think it's going to be a very, very, very difficult task for this team to make the playoffs. Doesn't mean they're not doing things right. They're playing incredibly well. They're playing together. But I have to be, if I'm totally honest, I still don't see the Jazz as a playoff team. The only other team that may be running a little bit of, false hype right now is the Clippers. Worth keeping an eye on. They were a terrible road team last year. They've played only 4 road games. They're the only team in the NBA to have played fewer road games than the Utah Jazz. Jazz have played 5 road games. Clippers have played 4. Contrast that to almost every other team in the West has played 8 or 9 road games. So, yeah, I got to tell you, I suspect Portland makes the playoffs. I suspect the Lakers make the playoffs. So Houston, who's won 7 straight, 10-7, and Utah is 10-5. I'm not sure where I see them getting in. Furthermore, I think Minnesota's still pretty good. They've had a brutal schedule. They aren't winning at home, but they're really quite strong. So I guess I could still see the Jazz finishing 11th or if the schedule wears them out 12th in the West. and have a very, very good season. That's kind of been my point all year long, as everybody has um, looked at this and talked about it and on all those kind of things. Because as well as they're playing, as much as they're doing, this is, I'm not willing to go against the star-driven league. I do think that that's um, what's going on in Portland and Oklahoma and Utah and Indiana are encouraging because they are not as star-driven, but over the time of the season, let's keep an eye on that. Many have said we need to find a way to keep Evans on the floor. How do we do that? Who is his NBA comparable? What is his ceiling? From Lock Tip Off, from Rats Dogs. Gosh, I love Jeremy. He sure makes things happen every time he's on the floor. Defensively, there is no comparable to him, and that's the problem. He isn't. He's not a three. He doesn't have the ball handling skills yet to be a three, or at least I haven't seen it. I know he's been working at it, so I hate to doubt him on that. Um, the the other thought I would have on that, I don't know. I mean, he he's got a lot of work to do to make sure that he can be more than just a guy who dunks, and it's going to take some time. But he's 180 pounds, 85 pounds. I mean, he just doesn't get matchups in which he's not 20 to 30 pounds outweighed, and there's been some real times when he's been on the floor where it's been incredibly bad mismatch and he gets worked. And so um, I'm not sure if I actually agree with the premise. I love the kid, but there's a lot he has to do still to earn those minutes on the floor. But as a fifth big and someone who can fill that role, he's pretty good at that. Would the Jazz get better off not getting the Golden State pick? No, I'll always take talent. We're not that good yet. Z23 with his daily question. No, I don't. I don't think so. And I'll ski Solitude, not Alta today, for an hour and a half. Taking an hour to go hit the slopes before a little lunch at Z Teos and then a remote at Papa John's with Scotty G. What would Ty have to do to win Coach of the Year, which the NBA coaches are on the hot seat? Jazz are 2 games above 10th place. Yikes. Okay, that's my point. But I also, gosh, I'm nervous if it's a yikes. I mean, we've been very excited about this start, but nobody really realistically thought when the year started this team could make the playoffs. I certainly didn't. I thought I thought it was a pretty tough task to even be 10th or 11th in the West. Um, so I don't want to lose focus too much, and I guess the early start has everyone really, really excited, and I will be all for it and hoping that we can make the playoffs and these guys can continue to exceed expectations. And maybe we're still looking at this team through the paradigm of what we anticipated when the year started rather than what we should because of how they are developing and coming together as a group and doing all of these things. But I just look at the schedule right now, and they've had a lot of advantages, so it's hard for me to place them in there. I think they've had the most advantageous schedule of anyone in the league. Up to this point, coach. If they make the playoffs, I think Ty should be coach of the year. But there's always other guys out there. You have to remember. It's kind of like the Millsap All-Star conversation. Everyone's just isolating what Paul's doing and saying, well, he should be an All-Star. And I'd say, okay, that's great. He's playing All-Star level. But Darren played All-Star level for 3 years and never made the All-Star team. Making the All-Star team is a really difficult thing. There just aren't a lot of spots, and it's awfully hard to do. So I don't disagree that Paul's playing at an All-Star level recently, but the fact that everyone's like, oh, he's going to make the All-Star team, I actually can't see the math on how that works either, frankly. Um, Pau Gasol's not playing well for the Lakers, but I still think he's probably an All-Star. Um, so he makes the team. Depends what position you think Gallinari is. If he's a 3 or a 4, he's probably a 3. So then Dene is an All-Star. Blake Griffin is an All-Star. Marc Gasol's playing every bit as well as Paul Millsap. Tim Duncan could get voted in, probably not worthy of an All-Star, but could get voted in. Dirk's in. LaMarcus Aldridge should be in. Pau Gasol should be in. Kevin Love's pretty close to being in. Right? So, I mean, that's a lot of guys. So, again, we can't always just isolate. You got to look around rather than just looking at yourself. West Golfer 23 wants to know how will the Jazz play Hayward, Bell, C.J. Howard, and Burks and give everyone consistent because they're all playing well. Well, if they all continue to play well, then you're right. Then it's going to be hard to get everyone the minutes. Burks probably is the one who falls off, which would be disappointing to see. But I also think there's a chance we'll always going to have one guy injured. Remember the issue on Josh Howard when we signed him was whether his legs could hold up. Right now, that question is still a good deal in doubt, isn't it? I mean, he's been really good for the Jazz, but Jazz have played 15 games and he's played 10, I believe. So you are beginning to get into a little question of whether his legs are going to hold up. And CJ is playing very, very well right now. His last 5 games are probably the best, as good a 5 game sequence as he has had all year long. He's still shooting 37% from the field for the season. So if he suddenly drops out of going to the free throw line, which has been terrific to see, then his productivity slips a good deal. Burks needs to play better defensively. And Hayward needs to play better. I think his minutes are pretty secure. But I wouldn't. So, no, someone's going to lose minutes. There are not enough of them for everybody. But I'm not as maybe concerned as you are. I kind of think that's how it works. And I also am not sure that those are all guys that, are guaranteed minutes all the time. And certain matchups, certain nights are going to be better, and Tyrone has been brilliant at finding those matchups. All right, thanks for all the questions. Did I miss anybody today? I don't think so. There's some others. I'll try to get them in there. Appreciate all the questions to Locke Tip-Off. That makes it a lot more fun for me, particularly on days like today when we just don't have a huge amount of things percolating on our end of things. All right, talk to you soon. That's Locke Tip-Off for today. So talk to you at 3 o'clock from Papa John's. I think we're in North Salt Lake today. Come out and join us. We'll be giving away Jazz tickets with every order.